Hello to the Peaky Tank Top, your new go-to crochet project for effortless style and comfort. Now this loose-fitting sleeveless top has a really beautiful texture and it's also really versatile. There are lots of different options. You can make it longer, shorter, you can add ribbing, or you can have just a plain single crochet neckline. You can make it into a tunic. And you could also add slits at the bottom. This one's got ribbing at the bottom, but there are lots of different options, and it's a great piece for layering it up with like a long sleeve tee or a shirt, or wearing it on your own, whichever you prefer basically. There's some different photos in the pattern that show different ways you could wear it. So I made this using Stylecraft Special DK, but there's loads and loads of different options that you can use for your pattern. Today I'm going to be using Hobie Everyday Acrylic, and that is 100% acrylic, and you get 382 yards in 100 grams. So this is a category 3 yarn, and this is a DK, so you can use any DK you like. Hayfield Bonus would be a good one, and there's lots of different options that you could use. You'll also need a 4.5mm and 4mm crochet hook. We just use the 4.5mm one for the starting chain because we need to make sure that's nice and loose. And then you'll need stitch markers, scissors, and a tapestry needle. I'm going to be working in US terms throughout this tutorial, and but the pattern you can get in US or UK terms. So if you prefer UK terms, then I've got you covered as well. In terms of gauge, you need 11 stitches and 9 rows over 4 inches square, and that is using the Pique stitch, which is this lovely textured stitch you can see here. I'll show you when we get started how to make that one. I'm going to be making the extra small size for this tutorial. This one is actually the small, but I thought I would make an extra small now and show you how to do it. The sizes go from extra small all the way up to 5XL, so there's 9 different sizes you can choose from. And there's also lots of customizations that you can make as well to make it fit. If you find, for example, that your hips are a lot wider than your top, then you might want to go up a hook size for the hip section. Equally, if your bust is larger, go up a hook size for that section, and that should accommodate that. In terms of construction, the top's made of 2 panels, a front and a back panel. The front panel has some shaping around the neckline. The back panel is just a straightforward rectangle. We then join it at the shoulder seams, join it at the side seams, leaving a slit at the bottom if you wish. And then we do some edging, either ribbing or straightforward plain edging around the neck, the armholes and the bottom. And that is how it's made. So I think we should get started. So I am starting with my 4.5mm hook, and I'm just putting a slip knot on my hook with my yarn, and then I'm going to do my starting chain. Take a look in the pattern for how many chains you need to make for your size. I'm going to start with 47 chains. Okay, so that's 47. I'm now going to change over to my 4mm crochet hook, and we're going to start row 1 with a half double crochet in the 4th chain from the hook. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I like to work into the back bumps, but it is completely up to you how you work. So a half double crochet. Okay, so the Pique stitch is made up of a double crochet and a half double crochet all in the same stitch. So the way that we make that is we yarn over, we insert our hook into this stitch, yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through 2. So that's the first part of a double crochet. Then we yarn over and insert back into the same stitch, yarn over and pull through, and then we yarn over and pull through all loops on the hook. In doing so, we are completing a half double crochet and a double crochet all together. Okay, and it creates this little kind of bobbly texture. So I'll show you again. Yarn over, insert into the stitch, yarn over and pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, insert back into the stitch, yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through all 4 stitches. And we're going to just continue doing that across the row. And this is basically the stitch for the entire sweater, okay? Tank top, should I call it. You're going to carry on making these, they're called Pique stitches, P-I-Q-U-E, Pique stitch. And you're just going to keep working across your row, okay? Once you finish the row, you're going to turn and you're going to chain 3, and then you're going to half double crochet into the same stitch, and then you're going to continue making Pique stitches in every stitch across the row. And then it depends how whether you want to make a hip length or a tunic length top as to how many rows you need to do, and obviously it depends on which size you're making as well. But for the back panel, which is what I've started with, you're just going to continue making the number of rows that it says in the pattern for your size and whether you want tunic or hip length. Or you can customize the length as well, of course. You can just choose to measure it against your body and decide when you've got enough rows. See, this is the back panel, so you'll need to measure it against your back from your neck going downwards and see if you think that that's going to be the right length. Otherwise, take a look at the pattern. You can, oops, that's not the right stitch. You can get the pattern on Etsy or on Ravelry, and you can also view it for free on the blog. So go take a look at how many rows you need to make for your size. And once you've made the back panel, then we're going to start with the front panel. And the front panel is made in exactly the same way. So we make the Pique stitch in exactly the same way, and we use the same number of stitches as we used for the back panel. The only difference being is that we don't make so many rows, okay? We are going to do some shaping for the neckline. So we do straightforward rows up to a point. I think it's 4 or 5 or 6 depending on the size that you're making before you get to the top. And then we're going to do some neckline shaping for the last few rows. So what I want you to do now is go away and make the back panel and the front panel up to the point of the neckline shaping, and then you can come back and we will continue with the neckline shaping together. It's a really straightforward pattern, really easy. Once you've got the hang of this stitch, it's a really quick pattern to make, and it's got a gorgeous texture as well. So let's get going. See you in a bit. Right, so there we have it. We have finished the back panel. So for my size, which is the extra small, and the hip length, I've made 53 rows of this back panel, and then I've got the front panel, which I have done up to now 49 rows, which is per the pattern for the hip length where we stop. So as you see, I haven't fastened off, I've just paused, and then we are going to move on to the neck shaping. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to count a certain number in from this edge and from the other edge. Okay, so the number will be in the pattern of how many you need to count. So for the extra small, it's 12 stitches, so I'm going to count 12, and I'm going to pop a stitch marker in that 12th stitch. Okay, so we count 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Pop a stitch marker in that 12th stitch, and we go the same from the other end, so making sure we only count that one stitch there, not all of the chains. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12, so it's that one. Okay, so I've put a stitch marker in the 12th, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12, yeah, in the 12th stitch on each side. Okay, so now we're just going to continue from where we left off. So we obviously need to turn, and we do our chain 3, then we do a half double crochet in the same stitch, and then we're going to carry on with our peak stitch in each stitch across to the first stitch marker. So that means that you need to do a stitch in the stitch with the stitch marker as well. If you counted 12 and then put a stitch marker in the next stitch, then don't do the last one. But I put my stitch marker into the 12th stitch. Okay, hopefully that makes sense, because that's always a bit confusing, I find, when I'm reading patterns. Okay, so we just carry on doing our peak stitch all the way across. Okay, so this is the stitch now with the stitch marker in, so I'm going to do my last peak stitch in here, and then we're going to turn and move on to row 2 of this part. Okay, so row 2 is exactly the same, continuing the pattern. So we're just going to chain 3, half double crochet in the first stitch, and then peak stitch in each stitch across. Okay, and then you're going to turn again, and you're going to carry on repeating that just for these 12 stitches for however many rows you need for your size. So for my size, it's just going to be 4 rows in total, so 2 more rows after this. And when you've done that, you can fasten off, and then we're going to rejoin our yarn, and we're going to rejoin it at this second stitch marker. Okay, and that makes sure that we keep our stitches the same way round. Okay, so we rejoin here. So for the first row on this side, we started here and we work this way, and we're going to continue working this way. So we rejoin in the same stitch as the stitch marker, and then we repeat rows 1 to 4, or however many you need for your size. So you will end up with a neck shaping like that. Okay, so then we're going to fasten off, and at this point, before we move on to the seaming, go and block both of the panels to measurements, and then I will see you back here to seam everything together. So there we go, this is my front now, and I have done both sides, and then this is my back panel, and I've blocked them both so they're nice and level and even, and we're now ready to seam the shoulders. So first you need to decide which is going to be your right side and your wrong side of each panel. You need to make sure that they are matching up at the top. So you can see here that this row kind of sticks out and this one kind of sticks in. So these are opposites, which is what we want them to be. So we want the right sides to be facing each other in the middle. Okay, and then we're going to seam the shoulders together using a slip stitch seam, and you'll end up seaming this part here and then this part here, and you'll leave this part open for the neck. And you'll have a number of stitches, which it mentions in the pattern, left over in the middle. So all you need to do is to make sure that you work through each individual stitch, and you shouldn't have a problem. Okay, so what we're going to do is make sure we go into that first stitch of both panels like that, and grab your yarn and pull that through and secure that with a chain. And then we're just going to work into each stitch like so. You can work into both loops like I'm doing here, or you can just work into the outer loops, and that creates quite a nice ridge on the other side. It's completely up to you. So we just join them. Make sure you join them quite loosely, because you don't want your shoulders to be puckered up. So we do it nice and loose, going through both layers, grab the yarn and pull through everything, and then just start again. So this is a really easy way to join. If you prefer, you can sew the two panels together. That's completely fine, but I prefer avoiding sewing where I can. Just got that last one to go into, like so, and then we can fasten that off, and that's my first shoulder seam done. So just repeat that on the other side for the other shoulder seam, and then we are going to move on to the side seams. So we need to grab our trusty stitch markers for this, and you're going to be marking a number of rows down from the shoulder seam on each side, okay? And you need to place the stitch marker through both the front and the back panels. So we keep it the same, so the right sides are still facing, and we're just going to count down a number of rows. Now it's going to differ depending on whether you are, of what size you're making. So you need to check the pattern to see what size, but for the very smallest, the extra small size, it's 19. So we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 rows. So I'm going to mark the end of the 19th row there, and we want to make sure it's exactly the same. So you can either do it by just lining them up, or you can just count them again to make sure. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 19. So we get it through that one. Okay, and you need to do the same on the other side as well. So those are the rows from the top that we're going to leave open. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to the bottom and line everything up, and exactly the same way, just do a slip stitch seam all the way from the bottom up to your stitch marker, stopping when you get to your stitch marker basically. If you want to have a split at the bottom, then you can leave the first few rows unseamed. So maybe you like to have a split, that's fine. So leave those unseamed and just start from here, and you're going to do the same on both sides. Okay, and then we will move on to the edging. Moving on, I now have everything seamed. So I've seamed my shoulder seams and I have also done my side seams. So now we've just got some edging to add. There are a few different options for your edging. You can add a simple edging around the neckline. So you've got the neckline, you've got the armholes, and you've got the bottom edging. You can add a single, straightforward, simple neck edging of a single row of half double crochet around the neckline and the armholes, and that will just finish them off nicely, give them a nice nice look for a finish, or you can add some ribbing, which I'm going to do now. Now if you have done a split at the bottom, you'll have to do the ribbing in rows, and you'll have to start at one of the open edges and add your ribbing to the front, and then reattach and join it and add it to the back. Or you can just leave it with no edging, which is what I did on my tunic option. I just left it with no edging at all on the bottom edge. But for the neckline and the armhole, I added a simple half double crochet edge to that. Now I'm just going to show you now how to do the ribbing. So for the ribbing, we start with the neckline ribbing, and we're going to join our yarn in the back stitch here. So at the back of the neckline, join in our yarn here, like so. And then we are going to chain 4. So this is just going to make a really small little rib, which I think really sets it off. And then we're going to single crochet into the second chain, and in each chain until we get back, so that'll be 3 single crochets. And then we're going to slip stitch into the next stitch of the neckline. Okay, and then we're going to turn. For row 2, we're just going to do a single crochet in the back loop of each of those 3. Make sure your yarn's out the way a bit. It's a bit twisty, but it's all good. So work into the back loop with 3 single crochets to the top, and then we turn. Row 3, we're going to chain 1, and we're going to do a single crochet in the back loop of each of the 3. And then we're going to slip stitch into the next 2 stitches of the neckline. Okay, so I know they're not proper stitches, but just work it evenly around. As long as it's quite even, it doesn't really matter. Okay, and then we turn again, and we repeat row 2 and row 3 all the way until we get back to the beginning of the ribbing of the neckline. And then we're just going to join them together with a slip stitch seam, I can't talk, slip stitch seam, as we have done before. Okay, and you can do exactly the same process for the armholes, chaining 4 and doing your single crochet. The only difference being with the armholes, I would slip stitch into 3 stitches of the armhole body rather than just the 2 as we're doing here, and all that does is it pulls the arm sleeves a little bit tighter around your arm. So that's optional. You can slip stitch into as many or as few as you want. It's completely your decision for that. And then you can move on to your bottom ribbing. And for the bottom ribbing, we do it exactly the same way again, except we're going to make the ribbing a little bit deeper. I mean, you don't have to, you can do a short rib like this one again for the bottom, but it's quite nice to have a little bit of a bigger one. So I chained 7 to start, and then you're doing 6 single crochet in the back loops all the way across, and slip stitching into 2 stitches of the main body. Again, if you want a tighter ribbing, you can slip stitch into 3 stitches of the main body, but again, that is your decision as you go around. So that's the ribbing. You can go ahead and decide which edging you're going to add and make your ribbing. I don't know why I changed there. And you slip stitch one stitch as well. I'm not concentrating, can't talk and crochet at the same time apparently. So go ahead and do your ribbing and then we will be just about finished. And it's done. So I've added the ribbing along here, which as you can see looks stunning, and the cuffs here and around the neckline. Oh, and I've still got one end to sew in there. Oops. So all that remains now is to go and pop it on and take it out for a spin. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you are going to make one of your own Peaky tank tops. And I hope to see you again soon for another pattern with Concrete Gems Crochet and me, Gemma. Bye for now.